Welcome to the Dr. Dad's podcast, where a naturopath and chiropractor come together each week to share lifestyle medicine, health advice, and inspiring interviews with some of the top experts in health and wellness, bringing you the latest in nutrition, exercise, ancient healing, toxins and detox, your microbiome, mindset, hormones, brain, and much more. Stay tuned. We're going to teach you how to experience growth daily.
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Dr. Dad's podcast with my main man, David Wardy. How are you today, buddy?
I'm great, man. How are you?
Good. Our countdown.
2 weeks and counting.
That's I was just going to say.
Ah.
That we get a chance to reconnect after so many years. It's going to be so good.
I'm pumped, buddy.
With the whole family, too.
Yes.
It's going to help our growth hormone. I have a good feeling.
For sure.
Yeah. On the topic of growth hormone, we've got an amazing guest. We've been checking out his website and his product and his mission in the world. His name is Dustin Baker, and he's the president of Bioprotein Technology. And we're going to dive into his story and why he got so interested in growth hormone and the amazing products he's delivering. So, Dustin, thank you so much for being with us on the Dr. Dad's.
Dr. Nick, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on the show. I am excited to chat with you guys and see what stuff you're going to throw at me and get to talk for 45 minutes and listen to myself speak. So I'm ready to rock and roll. Yeah, absolutely.
It's amazing. Well, tell us, are you a dad?
I am a dad. I have a
Tell us about
14-month-old.
I
have one daughter.
Yeah,
I have one daughter. She's 14 months old, and she is awesome, of course. And being a dad is probably the coolest thing that I have ever done. Which, if you would have told me that a couple of years ago, I would have told you you're crazy. And then it's really been an eye-opener, and it's actually been really good for my relationship with my wife, my business, actually. And being a dad is really cool. I mean, I don't know if you can see me or not, but it does put a huge smile on my face. She's just, I don't know, man. She's just so cool and hanging out. There's a lot of fun. She is a bully at times. She's very animated, and she keeps us on our toes. I'm sure the story is not rare, to be honest, but that's my kid.
Well, congratulations, man. I mean,
Thank
14
you.
months.
Yeah, congrats.
What an exciting and challenging and fun and, worthwhile time to be with your kid. I mean, it's amazing. And I love what you said, like, it brought you and your partner closer together. I found the same thing. I mean, there's something about becoming a father or a parent that, it absolutely changes you in a myriad of different ways. But I think of like ownership, like you really step in when you're a parent.
Yeah. And my wife and I, we've always had a really great relationship. We have been very lucky to not have some crazy ups and downs, right? We haven't been together for 20 or 30 years. So I'm sure those times will come, but it's given us an opportunity to really work together and have to cover each other's weak points, if I'm making sense. I mean, I'm still new to a lot of this stuff. So we've been married for almost 3 years now. So that's still relatively new in the grand scheme of things, right? So it's been really cool. I will say that I am crazy lucky as a husband and as a father, because my wife does absolutely 95, if not more, percent of the manual labor when it comes to the unfun child stuff.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, especially in this time of their life, right? Like it's pretty full on for the mom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Amazing.
I can't imagine. I think I'm busy, and I look at her and I was like, oh man, that is, there are no days off. So she's killing it. I couldn't be a happier and luckier guy.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, let's get into some of your story here, because it sounds like you've been in product design for quite a long time. Mm-hmm. I'd love to hear some of that early story of why that was a passion for you, and then how that translated into this world of hormones, and specifically growth hormone.
Yeah, well, most of the story, to be honest, it kind of not answer all your questions, but leading the way is I didn't really choose a lot of this stuff. It kind of really chose me. And this all goes back to how I get here. I was a really unhealthy kid. I grew up in a divorced parent household, which is very common. I mean, especially, growing up in the 80s and 90s, it was more common than previous, of course. So I was shipped back and forth with my parents. And to be very honest with you, neither one of my parents are exactly a nutritional expert or a fitness expert or health and wellness. Regardless, I grew up with a single mom and a grandma to help out, and our entire lifestyle was based around just survival, right? How are we going to get to school the next day? How are we going to get gas in the car? Is everyone just fed? So things like proper nutrition, health, and wellness were not a staple. It was just survival. So I was a pretty fat kid. I didn't know anything about, I played normal sports and baseball and soccer, but I was a fat kid. And the reason why I bring that up is because unhealthy lifestyles and unhealthy habits as a child can compound into unhealthy habits as an adult. And in my early 20s and, my college career, really lack thereof, it got into more unhealthy habits, whether it was drinking or to be very honest with you, drug use or whatever it is. My goal in life was to party and have fun and think I'm this big shot that I was not. I mean, I was a real problem, to be honest with you. And the word health and wellness was not in my vocabulary. Now that all changed because I had a friend who stepped in, and I tell this story all the time, who stepped in one day and was like, hey man, why don't you not do all that awful thing that you're doing? And why don't you come join me in the gym? Now, I had maybe stepped in a gym a couple times, either just to hang out with people who actually did work out, or maybe I did one or a couple workouts, whatever. Either way, that day really kind of changed something for me. And it was the first time, somebody kind of took me under their wing, showed me a new thing, and that compounded. And I found something in fitness that I had never had before. And I just say it was a purpose. There was something there that I didn't have. It was something I had to work for, and it gave me a purpose and it gave me something to drive for. And through that process, I stopped pretty much. I mean, there was some bumps in the road and stuff, but pretty much I stopped what I was doing and I dedicated my time to learning everything I could about fitness and nutrition. And one thing leads to another. And I had a mentor who took me under his wing and taught me everything about performance and athletic competition and how to train athletes and realistically how to, starting to learn how to run a gym and all this stuff. And so my career started to compound. And before I knew it, I was running other people's gyms, etc. I owned gyms of my own. I ended up working in professional athletics and in Canadian football and NFL and stuff like that. And during that time, when I started taking over some of these gyms, there were these formulas made by this small company here in Tampa that I really believed in. I used myself, right? This is back in 2014. I used myself. I would thread into my career, and whether it was professional athletics or even in a gym space that I owned myself through, let's just say, midlifers, right? 40 plus something of, they're not athletes. They're just trying to get in 3 to 4 workouts a day. And these formulas just consistently worked across a broad range of individuals, from your world's most elite athletes and your top 0.01% to, me, right? Just a dad who's just trying to get a couple days of, just trying to get my workouts in here and there in a week, right? So there was something there. There was something very powerful there. And I was a big proponent of these formulas, et cetera, which got me into the design. The companies then asked me to actually come in. They would ask me, what do we think about this? What's the best way to market this? How do we, whether it be packaging or branding or messaging, or why was I so successful kind of penetrating a little bit of these different markets? And that's how I got my start in product design or messaging and branding and that stuff. Well, now we're years down the road. And in 2018, I was exiting a previous deal. And myself and one of my mentors were kind of like, what's the next step? And the business of the formulas that we're talking about wasn't even for sale, but we wanted it because we knew he was a user of the products as well. We knew that there was something there. We knew that there was something huge there of this works and people need to know about it. So we walked in, we came up with a deal. We had paperwork drawn up, signed, checks signed in 3 weeks, which is lightning, breakneck speed for a solid, clean acquisition, I would say. And, we're 5 years down the road. We have our most advanced products that we've ever made. And we are now in over 40 countries. We have, we've been shipped to every continent other than Antarctica. We have doctors throughout the United States. We have doctors in Africa. It's been a pretty wild ride. So it kind of just chose me, and I've kind of really loved every second of it.
That's awesome, man. What a journey. It's funny what, where life takes us. So let's dive into the products a little bit more. So I mean, I've been working, or I'm prescribing doctors, so I can prescribe growth hormone to patients. We've recommended peptides. We've done other secretagogues for growth hormone or gonadotropin releasing hormones and different, various different forms and technologies. But maybe like before we dive into specifics, tell us a little bit about growth hormone. You mentioned the middle-aged man. Obviously, this is something that's of a concern or important for men and women. But tell us a little bit more about growth hormone and why you feel like it's such an important part of the nutraceutical system.
Sure. Well, growth hormone is a dominant hormone for both men and women. You just stated that. It's absolutely a key piece in metabolic function, sex drive, physical performance, workout recovery, even soft tissue maintenance and bone health. In today's day and age, all we hear about is testosterone, right? TRT. That's the world that I live in. Is TRT, 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 TRT. We work with TRT doctors all over the country. And TRT is great. And testosterone's phenomenal. And it's absolutely essential for living, your best life, for lack of a better term. However, it's only really half the puzzle. I mean, there's very clear science that in order to absorb testosterone, whether it's natural or synthetic optimally, you need adequate growth hormone or its end result growth factors, right? So 20, 30 years ago, and I'm sure you remember this, or at least in, the medical world, when you got a TRT treatment, you used to get growth hormone with it. That was like a whole thing. That has somehow vanished into the atmosphere of people don't even know that anymore. And the only relationship that they have with growth hormone is thinking about professional wrestlers or bodybuilders in 1998, dropping dead in a parking lot. And that's the negative connotation that comes with it. Of course, that's I'm sure, and I'm speaking for you, but of course, that's probably not your relationship with it. You seem like you know exactly what you're talking about. So you understand that the hormone itself is essential for optimum living, right? However, where we come in is the needle or a synthetic drug is not always the answer for everyone. For me personally, this is my personal worldview. I like medical and medicine intervention for a medical intervention if it's medically necessary. And I believe that in today's day and age, we are prescribing a lot of synthetic drugs and a lot of synthetic hormones before maybe they're really needed, right? And there's other things that we can do, which is something why this product to me is so close to my heart, is because I don't take the needle. I don't take TRT, and I'm not the anti-TRT guy, but I think there's other things that we can do to help either optimally absorb the testosterone that we have or optimally increase or feel at least the benefits of an optimal hormone function without having to take a synthetic drug that comes with potential other side effects, whether it's a peptide or whether it's the synthetic drug itself. So what our job has become is really educating individuals that growth hormone is a good thing, right? It does decrease every single year after you're going to finish puberty and at different rates for different individuals. But in extreme cases, it could drop by 50% by your 40s or 50s. So this is something that should be addressed. It should be looked at. And you should probably be asking your doctor for an IGF-1 test along with your blood work for testosterone, which somehow has magically disappeared as well. That's a specific test that you have to ask for, which to me, and I'm not a doctor, I don't give specific medical advice, and I can't write prescriptions. However, to me, as a consumer and as an individual who pays for blood work, who pays for medical treatment, that should be something that should be probably included on a standard blood panel.
So what point on the IGF-1 test do you think that a remedy like yours could be implemented? Because it's such a huge range, it's different for everybody. I'm usually looking for people in the lower quartile, or even less than half. But I'd love to hear your take on it, and then how much you've seen that needle move when you are supporting growth hormone. Because I fully agree. I mean, I'd rather not use injections or prescriptions wherever possible. I'd rather find as many natural sources and support systems before going into the prescriptions. But tell me, I'm assuming you've probably seen a ton of them, of these IGF-1s pre and then post, and love to hear where you're at.
We actually get a lot more blood work sent in from physicians on testosterone than we do IGF-1. We have to end up asking people for IGF-1 tests. Physicians will send in hand over fist more testosterone blood work that they're really excited about, which have been like crazy increases. Now I'm sure that's not for everybody, right? You're only getting super excited about like really cool special cases, so that's tons of the stuff that we get in. When it comes with IGF-1, now I'm sure, like the range is going to change for each, as the age range goes on. What we have seen is increases in over 20%, depending upon the patient. You can do a blood test. You could like a blood spot test. Some of the testing we've done, I mean, people do stool samples even for IGF-1 serum levels. So, and we typically see those blood panels in anywhere for 30 to 90 days. So we always say, just give it 90 days, give it a test, that. But we actually still have to tell people like, hey, if you want to go get this tested, go get your IGF-1 test. It's very rare that people are doing this without someone telling them to do so.
Oh, that's interesting. So you talked about this sort of concomitant response with the testosterone just going off the charts. Is that just using this product? Is that what you're saying?
No. Okay. No, I am not. Okay. So we've seen both blood work. We've seen blood panels with someone who's not on synthetic testosterone and blood panels with people who are. So in the world that we live in, many doctors are already prescribing synthetic testosterone. So we sell to physicians who that's part of their business. So a lot of the blood panels that we do get are from patients who weren't necessarily responding to the testosterone as well as they should, or they're not getting results like they wanted to. And then in addition with our product, they're able to then absorb more, their numbers start to increase from addition of BioPro Plus.
Gotcha.
And that's with synthetic injections. And then we've also gotten blood work with bioidentical pellet therapy.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, it's important to speak to that because, on one hand, you can have people who categorically their blood work looks better. They don't feel any different, and the vice versa. You can have people who feel like crap and their blood work looks phenomenal. Or maybe they said that twice. But the point is that, what we want to get to is a place where people are feeling the absolute benefit of what they're implementing. So a 20% increase, like you said, in IGF-1, what does that translate for that individual? What are the typical things that you see people improve upon when it comes to that subjective experience?
Overwhelmingly, there's two things. The first thing is typically we'll get testimonials from all over the country and from all over the world. And the one thing, like, people are always like, how fast does this work? And everyone is different. And we don't like to make claims that we don't want to make. Like, we're not you're talking to somebody who's not a doctor right now. If you're going to call customer support, he's not a physician. However, anecdotally, we get 10 to 14 days is always the answer of increases in energy. I don't know what changed. I feel great today. My energy's through the roof. I didn't have to take an afternoon nap. I came home and played with the kids. These are all very specific stories. The other one is like day 2 or day 3 or 4, physical arousal in men. So waking up aroused like they haven't in a long time, like when they're a lot younger, which is indicative of a potential growth factor deficiency. So a lot of erectile dysfunction, I believe it's 1 in 3 men, it can be directly tied to IGF-1 low blood serum levels, can be directly tied to erectile deficiency, which would make sense because we're selling a growth factor product, right? So to those things to then start to increase is very, very common.
That's awesome. David, go ahead, buddy.
No, I'm listening to the conversation. I have a lot of questions, but I don't want to divert what we're talking about yet. I'll just kind of bring them in later. Question. So I'm sure you work with a lot of athletes, because I'm sure that's a big part of the population that's looking for the stuff you have. When somebody, for example, needs to get on some of this stuff, or whether it's for performance or whatever it may be, is there a cycle process for this stuff? I mean, I'd imagine this isn't something that you can stay on all the time for long periods of time. You kind of probably have to cycle on and off.
So cycling, number one, we don't have a recommended protocol for cycling, and there's a reason why. We're not manipulating the glandular function. We're not synthetically stimulating it. So we're not replacing the hormone. So when you're replacing the hormone or you're stimulating the glandular function, that's when you're going to start to see some of those side effects, or you might have to, have some sort of post-cycle treatment. We don't do that. We're focusing on, I like to say, the right side of the liver, right? So we're only dealing in protein cytokines. We're only dealing in actual protein amino chains instead of replacing or manipulating a hormonal function. So you don't necessarily have to cycle on and off of the product, because we're not trying to mitigate some sort of hormonal replacement issue. For instance, if you're using testosterone and then you're going to have an adverse effect or increase in estrogen, right? You have to take a PCT to then mitigate that. We're not having those issues because we're not manipulating the hormone itself. We're focusing on the liver, on the growth factors that are made by the liver after the conversion of the hormone itself. So again,
yeah, I'm sorry. So you're basically
giving
that, like you're saying that at the piece of it, you're giving the, what's the word I want to use? You're giving not the factors like you're saying to make the change, but you're giving, what's the word I want to use here?
All we're doing is giving them cell signals.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm trying to get at. You're really just giving them the signaling to allow the body to jump into that mode.
That's it.
No, but this is awesome, man, because as I'm hearing you, like I'm trying to think, like you're saying, avoiding the needle, right? Avoiding all this synthetic crap. And those are all the things you have to worry about when people get on some of those things, right? That have these long-term side effects. But from what I'm hearing from you, this sounds like a very, very safe product to use to actually get these levels up.
I would agree with you. That's one of the little quips or little lines we like to say is faster, easier, and safer. So if we're not anti-medicine, we're not anti-hormone replacement, we're not anti any of these things, but we believe that they're needed when they're needed, not necessarily prior to that. And I hope that makes sense when I say it, but we're just a third option. We're an option where you can take that. Maybe you won't want to take the needle. We get a lot of younger guys that honestly come in and not younger guys. We get a lot of older guys that are like, hey man, straight up, I've used X, Y, and D as a young man. I'm really messed up. I just want something else. I don't want to take this stuff anymore. And we're a great option for them. Are we going to perform as well as a synthetic drug that you're injecting, subcutaneously into your skin, depending upon the dosing? Maybe not. You're injecting a synthetic drug. We're not trying to replace that market. We're just trying to give people an alternative option that can give them similar benefits without the potential side effects and risks.
Right. And then I'd imagine for athletes, since what you're telling me, it's a self-signaling type deal, this isn't an issue with testing when they're using
Can't pop a drug
like
test,
this.
correct. Can't pop a drug test, and as of right now, we are cleared for, and it's not even a big thing anymore because they just ended their contract, but we've had it cleared for a lot of your main fight promotions. I'll sans names, but there's a couple of them that, we don't even pay the athletes. They love the product so much. They are their top fighters and they use them and promote for free. So we were cleared with their teams. We're clear with that. I'm not saying that we are allowed in every sport. The NFL does not actually allow our products. We are explicitly banned by the NFL. So I wouldn't say every sport. If you're interested in, checking us out and you play a professional sport, clear with your management team, please. We don't, the juice ain't worth the squeeze for your career. And I don't like people's game checks being on my word. So make sure you clear with your own team. But yeah, there is not a doping or a testing issue.
I love that that's even an option, man, because, a lot of athletes and, a lot of them end up doing this stuff illegally during their training cycles, and they'll come off, before season starts or things like that. But this is honestly, it sounds like a safer and another option for athletes to use without having the headache of all that stuff all the time.
I'll be honest with you, we have CrossFit Games athletes that reach out to us. And of course we don't promote, we're not going to promote them or say names, but they will literally reach out to us and say, hey, I have to come off of X and I have to clean out before a game. And I'm not a proponent of doping. Okay. I'm not, but people do come to us and like, I need something to prepare so I don't pop tests. I'm like, listen, I'm not going to agree or disagree with whatever you're doing prior, but this is a viable option for you to use. That's a lot safer than what you're doing. And we had this, I think, last year, and the guy came back and he's like, man, I've never felt that good at a games. I've never felt that good at a games performing because I'm not, and I don't want to get into the, their ethical decisions. However, it's just an anecdotal. The thing is, what's really great about the product is we have a huge footprint in the military and tactical space. So we have gone even so far as to have, I'll be honest, somebody from a 3-letter agency who manages a high level, one of their high level elite teams and factions for hostage rescue situations of a again, a 3-letter agency, actually tested and blind tested the product with their soldiers, their recruits, and came back with an approval process and flying colors. In fact, a lot of those guys, I think, still use the product. So much so, we had a special ops guy come forward with one of the stories he was doing. And again, this is anecdotal, and I do not have a clinical study to point exactly to this. We can't have a clinical study for everything that ever comes up, but he did a blind test on himself where he was an explosive breacher. He was in the NSA. He did times overseas. He did a lot of, let's just say, human extraction during our last major overseas Middle Eastern conflict. And now he was a SWAT cop. So his whole life for years was charges, building charges, blowing walls, entry points. And after a while of taking what's called blast overpressure, meaning you're actually physically so close to the blasts, you get things like TBI. And from his TBI, he was experiencing ocular seizures all the time. And after using the product, he said he used the product for 2 weeks, no ocular seizures. He's like, I don't believe this. This is ridiculous. This has to be placebo effect. Came off for 2 weeks, went about his way, called us back 2 weeks later. I hadn't heard from him yet at this point. Called us back 2 weeks later and was like, man, I started up again. I didn't believe this stuff, but I got to tell you the story. And he had no issues with ocular seizures again. He's been on the product for 2 years. So we get a lot of work with guys in the DoD, a lot of military, a lot of tactical guys. Again, to piggyback off the point of, you don't have a doping or a drug test issue, and it can give them a lot of relief or help them with a lot of things they might be suffering from.
Well, and those guys, I mean, I see a lot of guys. I see like Vortac. I'm sure you've heard of Vortac and some of these other special groups like you're talking about. These guys put their bodies through the ringer through their career, man. And just to have an option like this for them, honestly, when the latter half of their age, just to like support like just basic functions, man, these guys almost need these things because they've worn their bodies out so much over the years. So this is cool, man.
Couldn't agree with you.
Yeah, I love this. So I have a couple other questions. Sorry, Nick, if you want to cut me off, jump in there, buddy. So I was looking at what you put in this stuff.
Yeah.
And one of the things I saw was erythropoietin. Mm-hmm. As one of the factors. So what do you see with endurance, buddy, when people start getting in this?
Yeah. So the growth factors that we list are all found within the raw materials that we're using to do extraction. So what you're finding with things like EPO, and EPO is something natural that your kidneys are going to make either way. And a lot of fighters actually get pretty scared when they see that. They're like, whoa, because blood doping is a whole thing, and they're very worried about it. But these are things that we're simply extracting from the materials. And what we will get, I mean, you brought it up. So what you'll get is the science would show inclusion of a lot of these growth factors can improve your VO2 max, your cardio abilities, right? To then train harder, train more, right? That's if you're getting into the professional sports space or even the combat sports space, which is something that is a little more intimate and closer to my heart, is these guys are looking for the ways to continue to go into fight camp, train 4 times a day, and kind of not really miss a beat. And that's what they're, reporting back is they're able to recover faster. They're able to stay in their fights longer. Or I should say they're able to perform within their rounds better and recover faster.
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing that, buddy. And then I'm seeing you guys have fibroblast growth factor in there. So I'm thinking joints, connective tissue, so fascia.
The studies, 100%. The studies behind growth factors, I mean, I'm sure I'm not telling you or Dr. Nick anything you don't know. The studies behind growth factors are, I mean, the word plentiful is, doesn't do it justice. When you're looking at maintenance of the human body and what specific growth factors do for exactly what you just said is joints, arthritic conditions, bone conditions like osteoporosis. That is where we thrive. In fact, our clinical director who is on staff was a provider of the product prior to coming onto our team when we hired him. And he found our product by using it. He had just come off of a shoulder surgery. And again, this is not a rare scenario. This happens a lot with the orthopedic guys that promote our product. But his surgeon said he was one of the fastest healing that he had ever seen. And he wasn't taking any of the synthetic peptides. Now, I'm not saying that this is 100%, for everybody, but in great stories and great instances. This is a very common thing. I mean, we have orthopedic physicians who buy it for themselves when they have their own type of, because shoulders and hips and knees is what you see the most, right? That's typically, I don't know what the percentage is, but I would bet it's over 75% of most injuries in men is somehow related to athletic injuries in men is somehow related to shoulders, hips, and knees.
And then last question, I'll let Nick ask some more. I was looking at the list of stuff. Autoimmune, buddy. Have you guys had some pretty awesome testimonials for people that suffer with autoimmune disease?
So I'm not going to tell you something that we haven't. That is not one of the highest testimonials that we get. Those aren't as fun and as sexy as a lot of the other stuff. So the science of growth factors is going to show in our favor for that, but it's not an overwhelming testimonial that we get, to be very fair.
Well, and I'd imagine, I don't know if many docs are really focusing it on that, but I see a huge need for this for people that have autoimmune just because of the repair and recovery process that lacks.
Actually, with a lot of the physicians where we are popular with, outside of, let's say, your orthopedics or your surgeons, which aren't a massive portion of our physicians. Most of our physicians are DOs, MDs, and then we're very popular in the integrative space. So MDs in the integrative space, we're in some national health chains. That's all. A lot of that's all they focus on. A lot of autoimmune stuff, Lyme stuff. Their specialties are in those types of modalities, and I mean, I hate to do a puff piece on ourselves, but I mean, I'm here. Like they love and they love the product and they love what it does and they love the patient response from it.
I'd imagine, man. I'm getting excited just kind of looking what you're putting in this stuff. Go ahead, Nick. Sorry, buddy.
No, those are awesome questions and important for anyone who's listening because when you actually look at growth hormone, look at the laundry list of things it is doing and correlate that directly with age and recognizing that there's a steady decline as we age. I mean, most people would look at that list and go, okay, poor metabolic function, increased body fat, reduced exercise performance, increased stress and anxiety, depression, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, everyone's going to put their hand up because that's just the reality of aging. And so much of dis-ease is I mean, what's his name? Dr. The longevity guy, Lifespan, he wrote the book, David Sinclair. His whole thing is like, I'm starting to look at disease or aging as a disease in the sense that so many things start to shut down over time. And so now what I want to say is that, growth hormone obviously plays a really important role in all of these different systems. But you did share a story of growth hormone and these like bodybuilders and dying of heart attacks and things like that. Let's talk a little bit about the dark side of injectable growth hormone and sort of what you've seen and why this is we talked about why this is a solution, but why were people scared of growth hormone?
Well, I mean, I don't have a massive amount of experience with it. I'm 37, so I wasn't huge in the bodybuilding days in 1996. I think I was 11 years old, but it's just from everything that I hear. So exactly typically doing shows like this, or, what's insane is for a guy that can barely read or write, getting sent around to different, conferences and talking to doctors about this stuff, which is still pretty mind blowing to me, to be honest with you, about, how their preconceived notion is for human growth hormone. So a lot of the stories that I tell or I talk about perspectives are not necessarily my own. They're from, we just got back from Chicago we were doing some work with a functional health, national health chain that's based out of Chicago and hearing some of the stories of how people in medicine view growth hormone that are uneducated on it. Dr. Nick, clearly you're not one of them, right? But it's actually, and you may agree with me or disagree with me, but actually more of the physicians that I meet from all over the world, we'll be at a massive show in Las Vegas here in December from physicians from all over Europe, South America, everywhere. The amount of non-education on growth hormone, what it does, how it works, why it's important, et cetera, is more than prevalent. And typically it piques some interest of what we're doing, but the common story of heart issues, I tell this, it's very sad, and I'm not, very sad about certain people, they literally walk into the car after dinner and drop dead. Those are still the things that linger in people's minds. Now, I think it's important to understand that anytime you abuse a drug, right? Drugs are technically selective poisons. Okay. A synthetic drug is a selective poison. You're selecting to take a synthetic substance that does not, it's not coming from the oak tree outside, right? It's a synthetic substance you're willing to take because you are, or at least you should be, weighing your risk to benefit ratio. Is this something I'm willing to do because what I'm experiencing is worse than what potentially the drug can do to me? Now, if you are abusing any type of drug, the risk potential for side effects goes up. When you abuse things like growth hormone or other type of steroids, for lack of a better term, your risk rates are clearly going to go up, especially if you're combining them. And I believe that a lot of these stories are coming from individuals, or they're freakish stories you're going to hear about the news. The news does not like sending out stories of like puff pieces about, oh, this is really great, blah, blah, blah. And if they do, it's 1 out of 20, if at best. So the message that you're fed is, this negative or this villain in the room, sometimes without context. So these individuals are either abusing the drug or they're mixing it with other substances that should not be, number one, used and or mixed at all. And there has to be a fall guy. And many times I believe in those stories, only from hearing them, because again, I did not experience this personally. I was 12, 13. You get a bad guy, you get the boogeyman, and it just takes a little bit of education and understanding, and we get through. It's been a lot easier. I will tell you that since I've been with the company for 5 years, it's gotten exponentially easier, especially with the regulations that have been coming actually with growth hormone, and now with peptides with the FDA and some of these glandular stimulants. It's actually made our job very simple because a lot of the work has been done for us and people have been doing their own research. So it's a lot easier than it was a couple of years ago. I will tell you that.
Yeah, I believe that. I mean, one thing I tell my patients, especially those they're wanting, say, a prescription for growth hormone, I always tell them, like, it's such an unnatural situation to be insulin dominant and then to inject a bunch of growth hormone into your system. The reverse would be true in the sense that you got to lower your insulin to raise your growth hormone potential. And
where are you located at?
I'm in Vancouver, BC, Canada.
Okay, so in Canada, and this is a real question I have. So in Canada, what is the regulation like for synthetic growth hormone? So remember, I'm in the United States, right? I'm in Florida.
Yeah.
So what is the regulation for prescribing the drug outside of a child with growth hormone deficiency syndrome?
Yeah. Well, everything's technically off label, right? But performance enhancement, that would be typically the protocol. But the thing is because it's usually for growth hormone deficiency that growth hormones actually, that's the on-label, reason for prescription. So as a naturopathic doctor, not a medical doctor, for whatever reason, we have access to that particular hormone. But again, it's typically given for the on-label use. Now, there's been a few patients who have had growth hormone deficiency, and we've directed them to natural sources wherever possible, and have not gone down the route of injectable growth hormone. But most of the men that come in, because I treat a ton of men and we do a lot of testosterone and other things, but a lot of the men that do come in also do talk about growth hormone. And in my experience in the past, but I didn't know about your product until more recently, I've always tried to work with more the peptides or the secretagogues, some of the other things. And I'm always very hesitant to write a prescription for growth hormone, because I know their blood work beforehand, and I have this communication with them. I said, listen, until you start to correct some of the insulin resistance that's going on, it's not smart for me to prescribe this for you. And there has been some research to show that there are prostate cancer increases in men who have done more injectable growth hormone. I see a lot of my male patients who have abused the steroid protocols in the past, and we're now trying to rehab them on proper testosterone optimization therapy on top of, fasting and all the other things that one would do to improve insulin resistance. Just like David, I'm excited that I've got another option here with your product, because I always want to steer people away from medication if we can.
Can I ask you a question about what you found with some of those patients of maybe that are precancerous because they used products in the past? Is it because, and this could be an opinion, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know what kind of test you did on them, but this is something that we deal with a lot, is talking about the potential for cancer, et cetera. However, there are what I have found in my travels, if you will, is the community, at least here in the States, is the medical community is kind of 50-50 on what, is it going to cause cancer? Is it not going to cause cancer? And we're talking about the synthetic drugs here.
Yeah.
Would you say that, because there's also studies to show that too low of, I wouldn't say that too low, but there's studies that have been done to show the correlation between a higher PSA score, or a higher prostate specific antigen score, related to lower or too low of IGF-1 blood serum levels, right? Would you say potentially with your patients then, they might be experiencing some cancer issues because they abused the drugs in the past and their IGF-1 is too low and that caused the correlation? Or would you say it's directly related just to the drug use specifically and putting them in maybe into an abnormal range where, they're having the chest problems?
Yeah, well, I think it's a little bit of both, because we can see the population of men who have never been in the world of, say, fitness, and have never done the injectable testosterone or the androlone or all the different, off market or non-prescription drugs they may have used in the past, and are just got there because they're massively insulin resistant. Right. And so they've got depleted growth hormone levels. And I would say those are more the estrogen dominant, high insulin type men with very low IGF-1 that are predisposed to higher rates of cancer. And
then there is a little bit of
there's a both, man.
Yeah.
And I would say typically for those men who look good on the outside, are fit and doing all the things, they tend, and they're still doing it, but they had that history of abuse with whatever different medications they were using at the time. I'm seeing in those populations higher levels of PSA. And so, it's a split for sure, but it does make me go, or make me pause on whether or not I would ever even recommend a prescription going forward for for growth hormone. And so, to the point of having these more natural states through lifestyle medicine, and then incorporating tools that like the growth factor tools like these. It's amazing.
Yeah. And we always say before we listen, man, what we do is not inexpensive. It's still a cash pay medical, protocol, if you will. It is a dietary supplement, but it's not inexpensive. It is a commitment, right? And we always recommend that individuals, before they jump on anybody's train or they're doing anything, the fastest way to increase some of this stuff is simply sleep, food, and workouts. There's plenty of science to show if you fix your sleep, you're getting the appropriate amount of, SWS and REM sleep. That's where your hormones are being secreted anyways. So if you can improve those, a little time investment, which seems to be the hardest thing for people, a little bit of time investment in some good solid sleep, some healthier choices, right, between nutrition, which nobody likes to do, and some intense bouts of physical exertion can fix a lot of this stuff for you. And I'm sure you would, agree with me. We recommend that people do that first. We are a cash business. We make money. I have bills to pay, but frankly, we're not out here trying to scam people. If you got issues and problems, why don't you try that stuff first? And then, if you want an extra boost or it's quote unquote not working for you, we're here to help. But we always recommend that stuff first. And that's a personal thing. That's a personal ethics and moral thing. I would appreciate if people try and do that stuff first, just because you're going to feel better. And if you're a candidate for us, you're probably still going to be a candidate for us anyways. But, a little bit of sleep goes a long way.
100%. I got to ask about women in perimenopause, going into menopause. A lot of patients we see end up having postpartum, even hair loss. But there's thyroid issues, there's weight gain issues. What kind of what have you seen in the women's population in that sort of
Dr.
time
Nick,
period?
I can talk on that, but I am not a women's specialist. But I can give you some anecdotal stuff. I can point you to some growth factor studies if you'd like to read it, and I can tell you what we get. So, we do see great results with women. We have, we boast about and promote specific testimonials we get from women all the time, especially going into premenopause and menopause themselves, of even quotes of I can't imagine not taking it. Right. We have a nurse practitioner. I think she's in Utah. I can't remember, but who just came in with this glaring and just sent us this huge long video of how she can't, get enough of it. She's an athletic woman, the fatigue, the hot flashes. Her literal quote is, "Man, I just can't see myself not waking up and taking this every day." And she promotes it to all of her patients. She's 47. She's an athletic gal, but father time takes no prisoners. Everyone's subjected to it. It doesn't matter how good we eat, train, or sleep. Like it's going to happen at different rates, but we see that a lot. When we have seen improvements, and I'm not a thyroid expert, but when we have seen improvements in thyroid testing and blood panels, it was women first who showed improvements in metabolic function and thyroid issues. Especially, you hear the words, "I'm not a doctor, and if you have special issues, you always need to talk to your primary care physician and who's handling your stuff." But we get these words thrown at us a lot, which is the Hashimoto's and thyroid conditions, etc. Men and women both have shown improvements in blood work. So that has been really huge. Our female clientele and historically have actually been female physicians recommending our products the most. The men thing came along a couple of years ago when we changed up the marketing a little bit, because men are a bit of an easier audience to target because this is something they're kind of already looking into. Women take a little bit more of education to get into it, but we're seeing benefits with women consistently.
It's awesome. David, go ahead.
Oh, it's such a need for women, man. I mean, that was my next question. You asked it for me, but you and Sonia work a lot with hormones with females, right? And what I see a lot with a lot of my female patients is issues with testosterone, right? But it's interesting how you don't really hear much about growth hormone anymore. But like Dustin was saying, you'll see increases once you get on this in your testosterone, right? Is that what you were telling me?
Yeah, you can. Absolutely. That's what the blood work will show.
And I honestly see it's the testosterone's a big issue for all these females, and they're not really excited to jump on anything synthetic or go down that road. To be honest with you, that's usually the first concern I get is like, well, I don't want to take, anything synthetic. So what's my options? And honestly, Dustin, I didn't even know this was an option until now. And I'm like super pumped because now I have a tool I can actually, help these women out with. Because before now, it's kind of like what we were talking before. Me and Nick just try to clean up the stuff they're already not doing right every day that they need to be doing right first, and look at the metabolism and exercise and eating right and all that other stuff. But this is such a powerful thing that is in that, it's kind of in between the space, right? It's not the synthetic stuff. It's better than supplements, and it's going to give us a change. And so, yeah, man, this is pretty awesome stuff. And for our listeners, guys, there's not really a whole lot of options out there. I mean, what they've created here is a pretty special product for an option, like you're saying, when you're moving into those latter years, or whether it's performance, whatever it may be, to take something to give you all those things that you're wanting, whether it's better sleep and better libido and better recovery and lowering your joint pain. I mean, there's all these benefits to growth hormone. And so, but yeah, my hat's off that you guys, saw a need for this and just went after it, because, there's a lot of things like that in this world, and some people just let them die with a business that just never quite get there. But this is awesome, man. This is good stuff.
Well, I really appreciate it. I can't really take, all kinds of credit. I have a great team, and we just have some good ideas. And we took something that already existed and worked and just continued in doing whatever we could to make it better. And we continue to do it to this day. A lot of the basics of what we're doing is, and I'm saying this to be fair, I would love to take all the credit and say we're the only ones, who came up with this stuff. But a lot of this science is an Asian science. It's been going on for a long time. There's tons of clinical stuff you can look up of science and studies out of Taiwan and Korea. I mean, this is a big business, a very serious thing. We just want to do it the best that we can and do it here in America. And that's what we've done. And we will continue to do that. We really believe in what we do. I mean, I laugh because it's like, oh, I'm a client as well as one of the owners. And like, yeah, that's true. I mean, this was a huge project for us, and it's, we've put all our chips in this. This has been a huge success for us. We hope that it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And for that exact purpose is that there is an absolute vacuum being created. And that's what I was asking Dr. Nick, is like, what is it like in Canada? Because in the United States, like, you might be prescribing stuff off label, but that's highly illegal in certain areas for growth hormone here in the States. You can't be prescribing that for aesthetic purposes and for anti-aging purposes. Every day that ticks by in the States here, those things get further and further away. And I'm not saying it's 100% of the areas, but I'm talking in certain places and in certain states, in a majority of them, That's not allowed. And that's why the FDA stepped in a lot with the peptides as well. And on November 17th, I believe, is the day, and not all peptides, but some of the original ones that are talking about exactly what we're talking about in this space, you're not allowed to use anymore. So it's been very good for us, whether that's a good thing for people or not, that some of these things are being removed. But it's been an interesting ride for us, that's for sure. It's been very exciting.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I mean, like Ozempic and some of those other peptides are just blowing up on the weight loss side of things.
Yeah,
so it's interesting because like when FDA shuts certain things down, it's usually because there's drugs in the making.
Well, and potentially yes, and
there's harms. There's also other things that are.
Well, I mean, you could talk about Ozempic because it's that drug wasn't designed for people who want to lose 10 pounds. That drug was designed for people who want to lose 100 pounds, and You're talking about people who are at an early death risk because they're morbidly obese. Great drug. Somebody who's trying to fit into their swimsuit in 6 months, maybe not a great drug because of the potential side effects. So you have to think about those things. I've never taken Ozempic. I have no money in Ozempic. I don't care. Right? Mm-hmm. I don't compete with Ozempic, so it doesn't. I shouldn't even be saying the word. I don't want any emails or letters or anything like that. But again, I'm not an anti-medical guy. I'm not a for-medical guy. I do what's best for the patient. I'm sure you do the same, Dr. Nick. What's best for the patient. I'm a fix the stuff that you can fix first, and if medical intervention is necessary, then it's necessary. If I get my arm chopped off, believe me, I would like medical intervention as soon as humanly
100%.
possible. But I'm just also not the guy who runs off to get a needle just because I'm 37 and why not? Which seems to be a very common thing today too.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, David and I have been back and forth many times on recovery and just all the hitting the hard workouts, playing, the weekend warrior, whatever it is, but really hitting home this concept and the mindset of recovery. And, now that I'm turning 44 soon, I'm always picking David's brain for, tools to offset some of the stress on the body from abusing it in
What's your sport, Dr. Nick? What is
I used to play college basketball, but more recently it's been baseball, softball. And softball is one of those sports that just abuses you because you go from standstill doing nothing
full
to sprinting is, so my 44-year-old body is now experiencing some of the deficits of that recovery. So I'm excited to give your product a try.
Oh, I'd be excited to hear how it works for you.
Yeah, definitely. So, so the website, you go to bioprotein.com, right? Oh,
Bioprotein Tech. BioProteintech.com. If you want to I always tell people to go to the social media, the Instagram, because it's, we're not a big sales company. We don't push stuff in your face, but what's cool about the social media platforms is a lot of the stuff is user generated. You can see exactly, you can see what people say about it. You can see people use it. You can see what athletes say about it. I mean, the world has been very good to us. I'll be honest with you. We don't really have to search hard for content, for testimonials, for people. It shows up almost kind of on its own, and it's been really cool. So if you want to be a part of that community, go over on social media. It's the same thing, Bioprotein Tech. So its Instagram is BioProteintech, and weigh in. Ask other people. Put it in the comments. Ask other people what they think about it. I think you'd be surprised at the kind of answers you might get.
And Dustin, we have a lot of docs that listen. You guys do wholesale programs for doctors who want to distribute.
Yeah, that's been the history of our business. To be honest with you, we have a clinical director who manages all those things. He's a provider. He's a prescribing physician as well. So he talks a little bit more of the doctor lingo, if you will. But yeah, we absolutely do that. Yeah,
very good. Cool. We get both. We get docs that listen, and just the every average day Joe, right? Every average Joe.
I'll be honest with you. Without the physicians, we would absolutely not be where we're at because some things sound too good to be true. And if it's coming from a guy like me, a lot of people might think, yeah, that is. And this guy's just spewing stuff, which is true. That's my job. However, without the long list of physicians that we have, and we're not talking, random dudes in the basement. We're talking very, very highly well-respected physicians who manage very high-profile clients as well as sports teams who have done the work for us. To be honest, they are our biggest proponent. They are our biggest advocates. They're our biggest. You can have the best athlete in the world, but what do they really know? And I hope they're not listening, get all upset. They won't. But when you have real respected endocrinologists, physicians that sing your praises, I can't pay for that. So it's been a godsend.
That's awesome. Any final thoughts before we say goodbye for the day?
No, I spoke my pre-recorded, tape that plays on the inside of my head for the last hour. I don't think I have anything left.
Oh, that's amazing. Dustin, it's a pleasure meeting you, buddy. I look forward to trying out the product and sharing it with our patients and getting to know it more on a personal level. So
that would be great. I would love the opportunity. Nothing would make me happier. So please, reach out. Let me know how I can facilitate that for you. Both of you.
Thank you, brother.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please be sure to subscribe to the Dr. Dads and share with your family and friends. You can also follow and interact with Dr. Nick and Dr. David on Facebook and Instagram for a daily dose of inspiration and the latest in health and wellness. Be well.